"Mrs. Richardson, you need to come down here, now, and maybe call the police." Those words from Mario, my trusted plumber, made my blood run cold as I stood at the top of my basement stairs on that Tuesday morning. My hands gripped the railing so tightly my knuckles turned white as I descended each step, my heart hammering against my ribs. What I saw when I reached the bottom would shatter everything I thought I knew about my daughter-in-law Amber, and expose a criminal operation that had been running right under my roof for nearly 3 years. But let me back up and tell you how a retired elementary school teacher like me ended up harboring a criminal mastermind in my own home. How my sweet, charming daughter-in-law fooled not just me, but my intelligent son, our entire neighborhood, and dozens of innocent victims across 3 states. My name is Linda Richardson. I am 64 years old, and this is the story of the most devastating betrayal of my life. If you're watching this video right now, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I need to know how far this story reaches, because what happened to me could happen to anyone, anywhere. Evil doesn't announce itself with horns and a pitchfork. It walks through your front door with a bottle of expensive wine and a beautiful smile, and before you know it, you've invited a monster into your home and called her family. Stay with me until the end of this story because the clues were there all along, hidden in plain sight, and I missed every single one of them. If my experience can save even one person from the nightmare my family endured, then sharing this painful story will have been worth it. Let me take you back 3 years to the Sunday afternoon when my son Marcus first brought Amber home for dinner. I remember that day so clearly, how the autumn sunlight streamed through my kitchen windows as I prepared my special pot roast, the meal I always made when Marcus brought someone special to meet me. My late husband Richard had passed away 5 years earlier from a sudden heart attack, leaving me alone in our comfortable suburban Michigan home. Marcus was my only child, my pride and joy, and at 25 years old, he had grown into exactly the kind of man his father and I had raised him to be. He worked as a hospital administrator, was responsible with money, treated people with respect, and had a kind heart that sometimes worried me because I knew the world could be cruel to people who trusted too easily. When he called that Thursday to ask if he could bring someone special to Sunday dinner, I heard something different in his voice. Excitement, nervousness, and a tender quality that told me this woman was important to him. I spent all day Saturday cleaning the house, polishing the good china, and planning the perfect menu. I wanted everything to be perfect for this young woman who had clearly captured my son's heart. When the doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, I smoothed my apron, checked my reflection one last time, and opened the door with a welcoming smile. What I saw took my breath away. The woman standing beside my son was absolutely stunning, the kind of beautiful that makes you do a double take. Amber had platinum blonde hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, the kind of hair that looked like it required professional styling, which I later learned it did. Her skin was flawless, her makeup expertly applied but not overdone, and she wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater with dark jeans that looked simple but screamed expensive. Her smile was radiant, genuine, and warm as she extended a perfectly manicured hand to shake mine. "Mrs. Richardson, it is such an honor to finally meet you," she said, her voice smooth and cultured. "Marcus talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know you." In her other hand, she held a gift bag from an upscale boutique I recognized from the wealthy part of town. Inside was a beautiful candle in a crystal holder and a bottle of wine that I later discovered cost over $80. I was immediately charmed. Here was this beautiful, sophisticated young woman who had clearly put thought into meeting me, who spoke with respect and warmth, who looked at my son with such obvious affection. We settled into the living room while the roast finished cooking, and I studied her carefully, the way any mother studies a woman who might become part of her family. Amber told us she was 26 years old and worked as a junior marketing executive at a boutique consulting firm downtown. She spoke confidently about her work, though I noticed she kept the details vague, mentioning clients and campaigns without ever naming specific companies or projects. When I asked about her family, her expression softened with genuine-looking sadness. "I lost my mother when I was 16 to breast cancer," she explained, her voice catching slightly. "It was just the 2 of us after my father left when I was little. After Mom died, I went to live with my grandmother in upstate Michigan, but she passed away 2 years ago. I don't really have family anymore, which is why meeting Marcus and potentially becoming part of your family means so much to me." My heart broke for her. Here was this lovely young woman, who had experienced so much loss at such a young age. I reached across and squeezed her hand, feeling an immediate protective instinct. "Well, you have family now," I told her warmly. "Anyone who makes my son smile like he's been smiling is already part of this family." The gratitude in her eyes seemed so real, so genuine. She asked about my late husband, looking at the photos on the mantel with what appeared to be sincere interest. She inquired about my years as a teacher, asking thoughtful questions about my students and my retirement. She complimented my home, my cooking, my garden visible through the back window, all with a warmth that felt authentic rather than forced. During dinner, Amber entertained us with funny stories about mishaps at work, about her terrible cooking skills that made Marcus laugh and shake his head in fond recognition, about her love of old movies and classic novels. She quoted Jane Austen and referenced Hitchcock films, demonstrating culture and education. She insisted on helping clean up afterward, rolling up her cashmere sleeves to wash dishes despite my protests. As she stood at my sink, chatting easily about everything and nothing, I remember thinking how lucky Marcus was to have found someone so perfect. Beautiful, yes, but also kind, cultured, family-oriented, and clearly devoted to my son. As they prepared to leave that evening, Amber hugged me tightly. "Thank you so much for welcoming me into your home, Mrs. Richardson." This meant the world to me. After they left, I called my sister Janet and gushed about Marcus's new girlfriend. "She's absolutely perfect," I told her. "Beautiful, sweet, has had such a hard life losing her family, but she's not bitter. She's warm and genuine. I think she might be the one." What I didn't notice that first day, what I was too charmed to see, were the small red flags that should have caught my attention. The vague details about her work, always mentioning the job, but never specifics that could be verified. The convenient story about having no family, no one who could be contacted or visited, no one who knew her history. The expensive clothes and accessories on a junior marketing executive's salary, the fact that she paid for the wine and gift in cash when we went shopping together the next week, always cash, never a credit card that could be traced. The complete absence of social media, which she explained away by saying she valued her privacy and found Instagram superficial. The lack of old friends from college or childhood, explained by her claim that she had moved around frequently, and people drifted apart. Every red flag had a reasonable explanation, and I accepted each one because I wanted to believe in this perfect woman who had brought such joy to my son's life. The relationship moved quickly, as relationships do when you're young and in love. Within 2 months, Amber had practically moved into Marcus's apartment. Within 4 months, they were talking about the future, about marriage and children and building a life together. I saw them every Sunday for dinner, a tradition that continued throughout their dating period. Each week, Amber brought a thoughtful gift, shared a new story, deepened our bond. She started calling me Mom Linda, with permission, of course, saying it felt natural since she had lost her own mother so young. She asked for my recipes, my advice on everything from career decisions to decorating Marcus's apartment. She made me feel valued, needed, important. For a widow whose son was her whole world, having a daughter figure felt like a gift. I had always wanted a daughter, had grieved when doctors told us we couldn't have more children after Marcus. Now, here was Amber, filling that void perfectly. 6 months after that first Sunday dinner, Marcus called me with excitement vibrating in his voice. "Mom, I'm going to propose. I bought a ring. I'm taking her to that restaurant where we had our first date, and I'm going to ask her to marry me. I want your blessing." "My blessing?" I laughed with joy. "Marcus, you have had my blessing since the day I met her. She is everything I ever hoped you would find." That weekend, Marcus proposed, and Amber said yes. The engagement photos he showed me were beautiful. Amber's face glowing with happiness, the diamond on her finger catching the light. When they came to tell me in person the next day, Amber threw her arms around me and cried. "I finally have a real family again," she sobbed into my shoulder. "I'm going to be your daughter officially." I'm so happy I could burst. We immediately began planning the wedding. Amber had always dreamed of a big celebration, she told us, having never had real family celebrations growing up. She wanted everything to be perfect, special, memorable. We toured venues together, sampled cakes, looked at flowers. With each outing, I noticed something odd. Amber's taste ran expensive, very expensive, and she seemed to have no concept of budget constraints. When I gently mentioned that perhaps we should look at more affordable venue options, Amber's eyes filled with tears. I've never had anything beautiful in my life, Mom Linda. My childhood was so difficult, and I just want one perfect day where I feel like a princess. After everything I've been through, don't I deserve that? How could I say no to that? Here was a woman who had lost her mother as a teenager, who had no family, who had struggled through life alone. Of course she deserved a beautiful wedding. Marcus and I pooled our resources. He contributed his savings, and I offered money from Richard's life insurance policy that I had been keeping for emergencies, or to help Marcus with a down payment on a house eventually. The wedding budget quickly escalated from a reasonable $15,000 to $45,000. Every time I suggested scaling back, Amber would agree initially, then find reasons why the less expensive option wouldn't work. The cheaper venue had terrible lighting for photos. The budget florist couldn't provide the flowers she wanted. The less expensive photographer's portfolio wasn't professional enough. Each objection seemed reasonable in isolation, but the costs kept climbing higher and higher. What I found strange was Amber's complete lack of contribution to the wedding costs. When I delicately asked if her grandmother had perhaps left her any inheritance that could help, Amber's face crumpled. Grandma died with nothing but medical debt. I'm actually still paying off her hospital bills. I felt terrible for asking, and immediately assured her we would handle everything. Marcus never questioned it, so devoted to his bride that he would have given her anything. The wedding planning also revealed another oddity. Amber had absolutely no one from her side to invite. No distant cousins, no childhood friends, no college roommates, no former co-workers. Her guest list consisted of exactly 3 people. 2 women she described as friends from her current job, and 1 man she said was a mentor from a previous position. When I suggested perhaps reaching out to people from her past, she became almost panicked. I've moved around so much, and I was so isolated after Mom died. I wouldn't even know how to find those people. And honestly, some of those years were so painful, I'd rather not dredge up memories by inviting people who knew me then. I want to look forward, not backward. The wedding took place on a beautiful September afternoon at an elegant country club with a price tag that still makes me wince. The ceremony was lovely, though I couldn't help noticing how empty Amber's side of the venue was. Just those 3 guests sitting in rows meant for dozens. Amber looked breathtaking in a designer gown that cost $8,000 alone. Marcus looked at her like she was the only person in the world. During the reception, I watched Amber work the room with practiced ease, charming Marcus's relatives and my friends with that radiant smile and polished manner. Several people commented to me about how lucky Marcus was, how beautiful and gracious his bride was. I agreed wholeheartedly, pushing down the small voice in my head that whispered questions about the missing family, the unexplained cash payments, the too perfect surface of everything. The newlyweds went on a honeymoon to the Caribbean. Another expense that somehow ended up on credit cards Marcus later discovered he didn't remember opening. When they returned 2 weeks later, tanned and happy, they announced they would be looking for a house to purchase. Marcus's salary as a hospital administrator was decent, around $75,000 a year, and Amber claimed her marketing position paid around $60,000, so together they should have been able to afford a modest starter home. They began attending open houses every weekend, and Amber would call me afterward to describe the properties they had seen, always finding fault with anything in their actual price range. Too small, bad neighborhood, needed too much work, didn't have the right feel. She wanted something impressive, something that reflected their success as a young professional couple. 2 months after the wedding, I received a phone call from Amber on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was shaking, clearly crying. "Mom Linda, I don't know what to do. I just got laid off. The company is downsizing and they let go of all the junior staff. I'm so embarrassed. I feel like such a failure. Marcus is going to be so disappointed in me." I immediately reassured her that these things happen, that the job market was difficult, that Marcus loved her for who she was, not for her paycheck. She cried harder. "That's not all. My lease on my apartment is up at the end of the month. I had been paying for it as a storage space for my furniture and things from Grandma's house, but now with no job, I can't afford it. I don't know where I'm going to put everything, and Marcus's apartment is so small there's no room for my stuff." I heard myself offering before I had fully thought it through. "Why don't you both move in here temporarily? The house is too big for just me anyway. You can stay in the master bedroom upstairs, save money on rent, and focus on finding a new job and saving for your house. Just until you get back on your feet." The relief in Amber's voice was palpable. Are you serious? Mom, Linda, that would be such a lifesaver. Just for a few months, I promise. 6 months maximum until I find a new position and we can afford to move out. I'll help around the house, I'll cook and clean. I'll earn my keep. You won't regret this, I swear. Marcus was equally grateful when I told him about the arrangement. Mom, you're a lifesaver. Amber has been so stressed about money. This will give us time to build our savings properly before buying a house. They moved in the following weekend, taking over the entire upstairs, the master bedroom, the spare room that became Amber's office, and the upstairs bathroom. I didn't mind. The house had felt empty since Richard died anyway, and I was happy to have family around. Amber seemed genuinely grateful, constantly thanking me, helping with housework, cooking dinners that were admittedly terrible but made with good intentions. She spent hours job hunting, or so she said, sitting in her office with the door closed, sending out resumes and attending virtual interviews. The first week they were there, Amber asked if she could organize the basement for me. Mom, Linda, I noticed your basement is pretty cluttered. I'm actually really good at organization. It's kind of a weird hobby of mine. Let me clean it out for you, get rid of junk, organize what you want to keep. It'll give me something productive to do while I'm job hunting, and I'll feel like I'm contributing. I was touched by the offer. The basement had become a dumping ground over the years, full of holiday decorations, old furniture, boxes of Marcus's childhood things, and various items Richard and I had stored away. I rarely went down there anymore. My knees weren't what they used to be, and the stairs were steep. Having Amber organize it seemed like a wonderful idea. She spent the entire first week down there, hauling bags of trash to the curb, rearranging things, installing new shelving units she claimed she found on sale. When I tried to go down to see her progress, she intercepted me at the top of the stairs. Please don't come down yet. I want it to be a surprise when I'm finished. Plus, it's really dusty and messy right now. I don't want you breathing in all that dust with your allergies. By the second week, Amber had installed a new lock on the basement door. She explained it to me over breakfast with a concerned expression. Mom, Linda, I was reading about home break-ins in the neighborhood Facebook group. Did you know that basements are actually a common entry point for burglars? They can break the small windows and get in. I installed a deadbolt on the basement door. That way, even if someone gets in through the basement, they can't access the main house. I'll give you a key, of course. But when she gave me the key later that day, something felt off about it. The key looked slightly different from the deadbolt, and when I tried it that evening out of curiosity, it didn't turn the lock. When I mentioned it to Amber, she looked embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I gave you the wrong key. That was the key to the old lock. Here's the right one. She handed me another key, but I never actually tested it to see if it worked. I simply trusted her, placed the key in my junk drawer, and went about my life. Strange things began happening over the next few months. Packages arrived at the house constantly, sometimes 3 or 4 a day. Amber always intercepted the mailman, bringing the packages directly upstairs or down to the basement before I could see what they were. When I asked about them, she had ready explanations. Oh, I'm doing some resale shopping online to make extra money while I look for a real job. I buy designer items on discount sites and resell them for a profit. It's just a little side hustle. The explanation seemed reasonable. Lots of people had side hustles these days, but I noticed she always paid in cash when we went shopping together, pulling out thick rolls of bills from her wallet. For someone who was supposedly unemployed, she seemed to have an awful lot of cash, and her lifestyle didn't reflect someone who was struggling financially. She still went to the salon every week, coming home with freshly highlighted hair and professional manicures. Her bathroom counter was covered with expensive skincare products, serums and creams that cost hundreds of dollars. When I gently questioned how she could afford these luxuries without a job, she had an answer ready. I have savings from before I got laid off, and I believe in investing in my appearance. When I go on job interviews, I need to look polished and professional. First impressions matter so much in marketing. Besides, I get a lot of this stuff through my resale business, samples and things. It sounded plausible enough, though something nagged at me. Marcus seemed unconcerned, so I told myself I was being paranoid, looking for problems where none existed. My son was happy, his wife was sweet and loving toward both of us, and I was grateful for the company. I pushed my doubts aside and focused on being a supportive mother and mother-in-law. 3 months into their stay, which was supposed to be temporary, I asked Amber how the job search was going. Her face fell immediately. It's so discouraging, Mom Linda. I've been on a dozen interviews, but nothing has panned out. The market is just terrible right now. Companies want 10 years of experience for entry-level positions. It's impossible. I felt sympathy for her struggles, though a tiny voice in my head wondered if she was actually going on interviews at all. I never saw her dressed in interview clothes leaving the house, never heard her taking phone calls from potential employers, but she showed me rejection emails on her phone, professional-looking messages from various companies thanking her for her interest, but selecting other candidates. I had no reason to doubt her, or so I told myself. Around this same time, Marcus started looking stressed and tired. He worked long hours at the hospital and came home looking exhausted, often heading straight to bed without dinner. When I asked if everything was okay, he brushed off my concerns. Just busy at work, Mom. Budget cuts mean we're all working overtime. One Sunday, Marcus arrived for our family dinner without Amber. She's not feeling well, he explained, but he looked troubled. After we ate, he helped me clean up, and in the privacy of the kitchen, he finally spoke what was on his mind. Mom, can I talk to you about something? His voice was heavy with worry. Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong? I dried my hands and gave him my full attention. He rubbed his face tiredly. It's about money. Our money. Amber and my money. I just found out that our joint savings account is empty. We had $30,000 saved and it's gone. All of it. My stomach dropped. What do you mean gone? Where did it go? He pulled out his phone and showed me the bank statement. Withdrawals over the past 3 months. Large amounts taken out in cash or transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. When I asked Amber about it, she said she moved the money into an investment account, something that would give us better returns. She said it was a surprise, that she was trying to help us grow our money faster so we could buy a house sooner. But Mom, I never agreed to this. I don't even know what investment account she's talking about. She keeps saying she'll show me the paperwork, but then changes the subject or says she left it at her friend's house or some other excuse. The worry in his voice made my chest tighten with concern. Have you pressed her for answers? Have you demanded to see the account statements? He nodded miserably. I've tried, but she gets upset and cries, saying I don't trust her, that she's trying to help our future, and I'm treating her like a criminal. Then she brings up how stressed she is about being unemployed and how hard she's trying to find work, and I end up comforting her instead of getting answers. Mom, I feel like something's wrong, but I don't know what to do. She's my wife. I love her. I want to trust her. I chose my words carefully, not wanting to poison his marriage but unable to ignore the serious red flags. Marcus, $30,000 is a lot of money. You have every right to know where it is and what's being done with it. Trust is important in marriage, but so is transparency about finances. You need to insist on seeing documentation, account numbers, proof that the money is where she says it is. If she truly invested it, she should be happy to show you the statements. His expression told me he knew I was right, but was afraid of the confrontation. I'll talk to her again this week. I'll be firmer about needing to see the paperwork. I hugged him tightly. You're not being unreasonable or untrusting by wanting to know where your money is. That's just being a responsible adult. After Marcus left that evening, I sat in my living room feeling deeply uneasy. The missing money, the vague job search, the constant packages, the locked basement, the expensive lifestyle with no income. Individually, each thing had an explanation, but together they formed a pattern that troubled me. I decided to do something I had never done before, a little investigating of my own. I went to my computer and searched for Amber Morrison, her married name, in Google. Nothing came up except a Facebook profile with no posts and no photos. I tried Amber Hartley, the maiden name she had given us. Again, almost nothing. No LinkedIn profile, which was strange for someone in marketing. No college alumni pages. No professional portfolio. It was as if she had barely existed before meeting Marcus. I told myself that some people just preferred privacy, that not everyone broadcasts their life online. But the complete absence of any digital footprint seemed increasingly strange for someone who claimed to work in marketing, a field that lives and breathes social media. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of, but my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. I looked up the consulting firm where Amber had claimed to work before being laid off. I called their main number, and when the receptionist answered, I said I was verifying previous employment for a background check. I'm calling to confirm that Amber Hartley worked at your firm until recently. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Ma'am, We don't have any record of anyone by that name ever working here. Are you sure you have the right company? My mouth went dry. I double-checked the name with her. The same company Amber had mentioned multiple times. The receptionist was polite but firm. I've been here for 8 years, and I know all our employees, past and present. No one named Amber Hartley or Amber Morrison has ever worked here. I hung up feeling sick to my stomach. She had lied about her job from the very beginning. Everything she had told us about her work, the clients, the projects, the layoff, all of it was a fabrication. I sat with this information for several days, unsure what to do with it. Should I tell Marcus immediately? Should I confront Amber? Should I investigate further before saying anything? I decided to wait and observe, to see if other lies would reveal themselves now that I was looking for them. I didn't have to wait long. The following week, my neighbor Margaret caught me at the mailbox. "Linda, I hope you don't think I'm being nosy, but I saw something yesterday that concerned me, and I debated whether to tell you." She looked genuinely uncomfortable, wringing her hands nervously. I braced myself. "What did you see, Margaret?" She glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "I was at Riverside Mall yesterday afternoon and I saw Amber there. She was coming out of the Gucci store with several shopping bags, and she was with a man. They were very affectionate, holding hands, and he kissed her before they separated. Linda, it didn't look like a business meeting or a friend. It looked like they were together." My heart hammered in my chest. What did the man look like? Margaret described someone in his 40s, well-dressed, driving an expensive Mercedes. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a potential employer taking her shopping as some kind of signing bonus. Maybe it was a cousin or relative. But even as I made excuses, I knew how weak they sounded. Margaret touched my arm sympathetically. "I'm sorry to tell you this. I know how much you love Amber, but I thought you should know." I thanked her and went back inside, my mind racing. An affair on top of the financial deception? Or was this connected to something else, something even worse? That evening, I casually asked Amber how her day had been. She smiled brightly. "Oh, just the usual. Sent out more resumes, did some cleaning. Pretty boring day, actually." She lied without hesitation, without a flicker of guilt on her face. I had seen her car gone for several hours that afternoon, the same time Margaret had seen her at the mall. The ease with which she lied chilled me. Over dinner, I watched her more carefully than I ever had before. The way she deflected questions about her job search. The way she changed subjects when money came up. The way she controlled conversations to keep them focused on safe topics. I had thought she was charming and engaging, but now I saw it differently. She was performing, carefully managing what we knew and didn't know about her. That night, after everyone was asleep, I tried the key Amber had given me for the basement door. My hands shook as I inserted it into the lock and turned. Nothing. The key didn't work. It wasn't even the right type of key for that lock. She had deliberately given me a fake key, ensuring I couldn't access the basement. But why? What was down there that she didn't want me to see? I stood at that locked door for a long time, my mind spinning with possibilities. Stolen goods from her shopping trips? Evidence of an affair? Financial documents she was hiding from Marcus? Or something worse that I couldn't even imagine? I knew I needed to get into that basement, but I didn't know how to do it without alerting Amber that I was suspicious. The next morning, I received something that made the decision for me. In my mailbox, mixed with the regular bills and advertisements, was a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a single typed page. The message was brief but chilling. "Your daughter-in-law is not who she claims to be. Check her background. Check the basement. You are in danger. A concerned party." My hands trembled as I read it twice, 3 times. Someone else knew something was wrong. Someone was trying to warn me. I immediately went to Marcus at work, driving to the hospital and asking to see him urgently. In a private conference room, I showed him the letter. His face went pale as he read it. "Mom, this is serious. We need to call the police." But I shook my head. "Not yet. Think about it, Marcus. If we call the police with just a weird letter and my suspicions, what can they do? We need proof. We need to know what's in that basement." He looked at the locked basement door that evening with the same frustration I felt. I don't want to break my own mother's door down, but Amber refuses to give me the real key. She got angry when I asked for it, saying I was being paranoid and controlling, that she needs her private space to work on her resale business. We had a huge fight about it. The fact that she was creating drama around a simple request for a key only confirmed my suspicions. Someone with nothing to hide would have handed over the key without hesitation. Someone with secrets would create exactly this kind of defensive smokescreen. The situation came to a head on a Tuesday morning 3 days after I received the anonymous letter. I woke up to a sound I knew well from my years as a homeowner, the distinct drip, drip, drip of water where it shouldn't be. I followed the sound to the basement door and found a puddle of water seeping out from underneath. My heart sank. The water heater was in the basement, and if it was leaking, we could have a serious problem. Flooding, property damage, mold. I needed to get down there immediately. I called my plumber, Mario Santos, a man in his 50s who had been servicing our house for over 15 years. Mario, I have an emergency. I think my water heater is leaking, but I have a problem. The basement door is locked, and my daughter-in-law has the only key. She's out right now and I can't reach her. I need to get down there before the whole basement floods. Mario didn't hesitate. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Mrs. Richardson. If we need to break the lock to prevent water damage, that's what we'll do. It's your house. You have every right to access your own basement. When Mario arrived with his toolbox, he looked at the water spreading across my floor and shook his head. We can't wait for her to get home. This needs to be dealt with now. He pulled out a small crowbar and made quick work of the lock. The door swung open, revealing the steep wooden stairs leading down into darkness. I found the light switch and fluorescent bulbs flickered to life. Mario descended first with me, following carefully behind him, my knees protesting the steep stairs. The basement looked different than I remembered. Amber had indeed organized it, but in a way that seemed deliberate and strategic. Boxes were stacked in specific areas. Shelving units created barriers and pathways, and everything was labeled in Amber's neat handwriting. Holiday decorations, Marcus' childhood, kitchen items, seasonal clothes. Mario went straight to the water heater in the far corner. The leak was minor, a loose valve that he tightened quickly. As he worked, he glanced around the basement with a puzzled expression. Mrs. Richardson, was this door always here? He was pointing to something behind the water heater that I had never noticed before. I moved closer, my heart beginning to pound. What door? Mario shifted some boxes out of the way, revealing a section of wall that looked different from the rest. It was a door, carefully concealed but slightly ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry and forgotten to close it completely. The door was painted the same color as the concrete walls, making it nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. There was a heavy-duty lock on it, the kind you might see on a storage unit, but it was hanging open. Mario looked at me with concern. Did you know this was here? I shook my head, unable to speak, my throat tight with fear. Mario reached for the door handle. Should I open it? Part of me wanted to tell him no, to close everything up and pretend we had never seen it, to go back to the comfortable lies I had been living with. But I knew we had crossed a line. Whatever was behind that door had been the source of all Amber's secrecy, all her deception. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. Open it, I whispered. Mario pulled the door open slowly. The hinges creaked in the silence. Behind the door was a room I never knew existed, about 10 feet by 10 feet, clearly carved out of the basement's foundation. It had been turned into a professional operation. The walls were lined with metal shelving units, the kind you might see in a retail stockroom. And on those shelves, illuminated by professional LED lighting that Amber must have installed, was a sight that made my blood run cold. Designer handbags, dozens of them, still with tags attached. Gucci, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Prada, jewelry in velvet boxes, sparkling under the lights. Electronics still in their original packaging. Laptops, tablets, smartphones, headphones. Luxury watches in display cases. Expensive perfumes lined up like a department store shelf. The room looked like a high-end boutique, except nothing here had been legally purchased. The sheer volume of merchandise, easily $200,000 worth at retail prices, could only mean one thing. This was stolen property, and my daughter-in-law was running a criminal operation from my basement. Mario stood frozen, his phone already in his hand. Mrs. Richardson, he said quietly, his voice shaking slightly. This is way beyond a water heater problem. We need to call the police right now. But I was staring at something else, a filing cabinet in the corner. I walked to it on trembling legs and pulled open the top drawer. Inside were files, meticulously organized and labeled. Each file contained documents that made my stomach turn. Credit card statements and names I didn't recognize. Dozens of them. Maybe 50 different people's financial information carefully cataloged and organized. Driver's licenses and social security cards that clearly didn't belong to Amber, but to other people. Complete strangers whose identities she had somehow obtained. Passports with Amber's photo but different names. 6 different identities, each with complete documentation. Bank statements showing accounts I knew Marcus had never seen. Accounts with tens of thousands of dollars flowing in and out. A leather-bound ledger, handwritten in Amber's distinctive script, with columns labeled inventory, sale price, buyer, and profit. Page after page of transactions. A meticulous record of her criminal enterprise spanning back nearly 3 years. Business cards claiming Amber was a luxury resale consultant for a company that I was certain didn't exist. Printed emails and text messages showing communications with other people. Coordinating deliveries. Discussing merchandise. Arranging sales. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and absolutely damning. Mario had come up beside me and was looking over my shoulder at the documents. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of everything. The room, the merchandise, the files. Mrs. Richardson, I'm documenting this before we call the police. This is evidence of serious crimes. Identity theft, fraud, trafficking in stolen goods. Your daughter-in-law could go to prison for a very long time. I felt my legs give out and I sat down hard on an overturned crate, my mind reeling. How had I not known? How had this been happening under my roof for nearly 3 years without my knowledge? Every late-night trip to the basement that I had attributed to insomnia or organizational projects. Every package she intercepted before I could see it. Every lock she installed to keep me out. It had all been in service of this massive criminal operation. I thought about the missing money from Marcus's account. The expensive lifestyle with no job. The mysterious man at the mall. It all made horrible sense now. Amber wasn't job hunting. She was a professional criminal, and she had been using my home, my trust, and my family as cover for her illegal activities. Mario gently touched my shoulder. Mrs. Richardson, I know this is a shock, but we need to call the police immediately. If she comes home and discovers we found this, there's no telling what she might do. She could destroy evidence. She could run, or worse. I nodded numbly and pulled out my phone. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. When the dispatcher answered, I struggled to find words. I need to report a crime. I just discovered that my daughter-in-law has been running a criminal operation from my basement. There's stolen merchandise, forged documents, evidence of identity theft. Please send someone immediately. The dispatcher asked for my address and assured me that officers were on their way. She instructed us to leave the basement, go upstairs, and wait for the police without touching anything else. Mario and I climbed those stairs in shocked silence. In my kitchen, the same kitchen where Amber had cooked dinners and laughed with Marcus and called me Mom Linda, I sat at the table with my head in my hands trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Mario made me a cup of tea, his hand steady even though his face was pale. In all my years as a plumber, I've never seen anything like this. How long has she been living here? Almost 3 years, I whispered. She moved in right after they got married. Oh God, Marcus. I need to call Marcus. I dialed my son's work number with trembling fingers. When he answered, his voice was cheerful. Hey Mom, what's up? Marcus, you need to come home right now. I found something in the basement. Something terrible. His tone shifted immediately to concern. Mom, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm not hurt physically, but Marcus, it's Amber. I found out what she's been hiding. I found her criminal operation in a hidden room in the basement. There was stolen merchandise, fake IDs, evidence of identity theft. The police are on their way. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Marcus, are you there? His voice, when he finally spoke, was hollow, destroyed. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't let her leave if she comes home before I get there. 2 police officers arrived within 10 minutes, a young woman named Officer Davis and an older man, Officer Patterson. I led them down to the basement, my legs still shaky, and showed them the hidden room. Their expressions shifted from professional neutrality to shock as they took in the scope of what they were seeing. Officer Patterson immediately called for detectives and a crime scene unit. Ma'am, this is going to take several hours to process. This appears to be a significant criminal operation. We're going to need to document everything, catalog all the merchandise, and examine all the documents. Do you know where your daughter-in-law is right now? I shook my head. She said she had a job interview this morning. She left around 9. I have no idea when she'll be back. Officer Davis pulled out a notepad. I need to ask you some questions about your daughter-in-law. How long have you known her? What do you know about her background? I told them everything, from that first Sunday dinner 3 years ago to the anonymous warning letter I had received days earlier. With each detail I shared, the officers exchanged meaningful glances that told me they knew more than they were saying. Within 30 minutes, 2 detectives arrived, a woman in her 40s named Detective Sarah Chen and a man slightly older named Detective Mike Torres. They wore plain clothes and serious expressions as they descended into the basement. I heard them talking in low voices as they examined the room, their tone suggesting this was not their first encounter with this type of crime. When they came back upstairs, Detective Chen sat across from me at my kitchen table, while Detective Torres made phone calls in the other room. Mrs. Richardson, I need you to understand that what we found in your basement is evidence of a very serious and organized criminal operation. This isn't someone who made one bad choice. This is someone who has been systematically stealing high-end merchandise and committing identity fraud for years. I felt tears streaming down my face. She seemed so normal, so sweet. She called me Mom. How could I have been so blind? Detective Chen's expression was kind but firm. These criminals are very good at what they do. They're professional con artists who know exactly how to present themselves as trustworthy and likable. You're not the first person to be fooled, and you won't be the last. Now I need to ask you something important. We need to run your daughter-in-law's information through our system. What's her full legal name? Amber Christine Morrison, I said. But her maiden name was Hartley. Amber Christine Hartley. Detective Chen typed on her laptop, her expression growing more grave with each passing second. She turned the screen toward me. Is this your daughter-in-law? The booking photo on the screen showed Amber, though her hair was darker and shorter. But it was unmistakably her. Those same distinctive features, that same face that had smiled at me across my dinner table for 3 years. Beside the photo was a list of charges: fraud, identity theft, forgery, trafficking in stolen goods. Mrs. Richardson, your daughter-in-law's real name is Amanda Christine Bartlett. She has prior convictions in 3 different states. She served 18 months in a Texas prison 4 years ago for running a nearly identical operation. She was released on parole, which she violated by leaving the state. There's currently an active warrant for her arrest in California. The room seemed to spin around me. Everything she told us was a lie. Everything. Her name, her background, her dead mother, her dead grandmother, her job, everything. Detective Chen nodded grimly. Everything. And Mrs. Richardson, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we've been investigating a retail theft ring operating in this area for the past 8 months. We've had reports from high-end stores about organized shoplifting, about merchandise being stolen and then sold online. We've been tracking online sales of luxury goods and trying to find the source. Your daughter-in-law has been on our radar for the last 2 months, but we didn't have enough evidence to obtain a warrant. Until now. So you already knew about her? I felt a surge of anger mixed with my shock. Detective Torres had rejoined us, and he answered carefully. We suspected someone matching her description was involved in the theft ring, but we couldn't confirm her identity or location. She's been very careful, using multiple aliases, never staying in one place too long, always having a cover story. The fact that she married your son and moved into your home, that gave her the perfect cover, a stable address, a respected family connection, a reason to have money and expensive items without raising suspicion. She used us, I whispered. She used my son and me as camouflage for her criminal activities. I'm afraid so, Detective Chen said gently. And I'm very sorry. Marcus burst through the front door at that moment, his face wild with panic and disbelief. He looked at the police officers, at me, at the evidence bags being carried up from the basement. Mom, tell me this isn't real. Tell me there's been some mistake. I stood and embraced him as he started to shake. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. It's all real. She's been lying to us from the beginning. She's a career criminal with prior convictions. Everything she told us about herself was false. Marcus pulled away from me and turned to the detectives. Where is she? Where is my wife? We don't know yet, Detective Torres said. But we've put out a notice to all units to be on the lookout for her vehicle. We need to bring her in for questioning. In the meantime, we need to ask you some questions about your finances. Have you noticed any unexplained charges, missing money, or accounts you didn't open? Marcus's face crumbled. $30,000 missing from our savings. Credit card bills for cards I never applied for. Charges I never made. She said it was identity theft, that someone else had stolen our information. I believed her. He laughed bitterly. It was her. She was stealing from me the whole time. The next few hours were a blur of questions, statements, and documentation. Crime scene technicians cataloged every item in the hidden room, taking photos and notes. Detective Chen explained that they would need to track down the original owners of the stolen merchandise and the victims of the identity theft. Each person whose information we found in those files was a victim who needed to be notified. As afternoon faded into evening, we still had no word on Amber's location. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The detective suggested that Marcus sent her a text message, something normal that wouldn't raise her suspicions. With shaking hands, Marcus typed out a message. "Hey babe, Mom is making your favorite pot roast for dinner. Can you be home by 6? We watched the phone, waiting for a response. 10 minutes later it came. "Perfect, can't wait. Be home soon," with a smile emoji and a heart emoji. The casual cheerfulness of her response, knowing what we now knew about her, made me feel physically ill. She had no idea we had discovered her secret. She was planning to come home, eat dinner, and continue her charade as if nothing had happened. Detective Chen made quick decisions. We're going to set up outside and wait for her to arrive. When she pulls into the driveway, we'll approach and make the arrest. "Mrs. Richardson, Marcus, I need you both to stay inside and let us handle this. Do not confront her. Do not try to talk to her. Just let us do our job." Marcus and I sat in the living room, holding hands, watching through the window as unmarked police cars positioned themselves up and down the street. The wait was excruciating. Every car that passed made my heart jump. Marcus hadn't spoken in over an hour, just stared at his phone, occasionally pulling up photos of him and Amber from happier times. "Look at this," he finally said, showing me a picture from their wedding day. "She's smiling at me like she loves me. Was any of it real? Was there any part of her that actually cared about me?" I had no answer for him. How do you comfort someone whose entire marriage was a lie, whose whole relationship was a carefully constructed con designed to provide cover for criminal activities? At 5:45, a silver Honda Civic, Amber's car, turned onto our street. My breath caught in my throat. Marcus gripped my hand so tightly it hurt. We watched as she pulled into the driveway, completely oblivious to the police vehicles waiting for her. She got out of the car, looking beautiful and polished as always, carrying shopping bags from what appeared to be high-end stores. More stolen merchandise, I realized with a sick feeling. Amber walked toward the front door, pulling out her keys, when Detective Chen and Detective Torres emerged from their vehicle. "Amanda Bartlett, you're under arrest." Amber froze, her face cycling through expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally cold calculation. She dropped her shopping bags and ran, sprinting toward the backyard in her high heels. But more officers had been positioned there, anticipating exactly this response. Within seconds, she was surrounded, hands behind her back, handcuffs clicking into place. Through the window, I could see her face transform again, this time into rage. She was screaming something, struggling against the officers holding her. They brought her around to the front of the house, toward a police vehicle. As they passed our window, Amber's eyes locked onto mine through the glass. The mask was completely gone now. The sweet daughter-in-law who had called me Mom Linda had vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Her face was twisted with fury and something darker, a coldness that chilled me to my core. Even from inside the house, I could hear her shouting, "You stupid old woman! You think you're so smart? I played you for 3 years! You and your pathetic son. The wedding was fake. Everything was fake. I never loved him. I needed a cover story and you idiots were perfect." Marcus made a sound beside me, a wounded noise that broke my heart. Detective Chen came to the door and knocked gently. "It's safe for you to come out now if you want to. We're transporting her to the station for booking." We walked out onto the porch in time to hear Amber's final words before they put her in the police car. She was still screaming, having completely lost control. "That house should have been mine. That money should have been mine. I earned it living with you boring people. 3 years of pretending to care about your stupid family dinners and your boring conversations." The door slammed shut, muffling her voice, and the police car pulled away. Marcus stood on the porch, tears streaming down his face, watching his wife, the woman he had loved and trusted and built a life with, disappear down the street in handcuffs. I put my arm around him and we stood there together as the sun set. Our family shattered, our trust destroyed, our lives forever changed by the monster we had welcomed into our home and called family. The days following Amber's arrest passed in a haze of shock, grief, and an avalanche of information that kept getting worse. Detective Chen became a regular presence in our lives, stopping by every few days with updates that consistently revealed new layers to Amber's deception. The morning after the arrest, she sat at my kitchen table with a thick folder of documents, her expression grave as she prepared to walk us through what they had discovered. "Mrs. Richardson, Marcus, I need to prepare you for what I'm about to share. The scope of Amanda Bartlett's criminal activities is significantly larger than what we initially found in your basement. We've been working through the night with our fraud division and the FBI, and the picture that's emerging is of a highly organized, sophisticated criminal who has been operating for years across multiple states." She opened the folder and pulled out a timeline they had constructed. Amanda Bartlett, she prefers the name Amber, has a criminal history dating back at least 8 years that we can verify, possibly longer. She served 18 months in Texas for fraud and identity theft, was released 4 years ago, and immediately violated her parole by leaving the state. Since then, she's operated in California, Arizona, Nevada, and now Michigan, always using the same pattern. Marcus leaned forward, his face haggard from lack of sleep. "What pattern?" Detective Chen pulled out a series of photos, different men in different locations, all looking happy in pictures with Amber or Amanda as she appeared with different hair colors and styles. She targets men, usually professional men with stable incomes and good reputations. She researches them carefully, often spending weeks or months learning about their lives before engineering a meeting that seems coincidental. She creates an elaborate backstory, always a variation of the same story, orphaned or estranged from family, tragic past. No one who can verify her history. She moves quickly to establish the relationship, gets engaged within months, and then finds a way to gain access to their homes and finances. My hands trembled as I looked at the photos. "How many?" "At least 6 that we've confirmed," Detective Chen said quietly. "You and Marcus are the 6th. She's left a trail of destroyed lives behind her. Bankruptcies, ruined credit, men who are still dealing with the legal and financial fallout of her crimes years later. And in every case, she used their homes as bases for her retail theft operations, while simultaneously stealing their identities and draining their bank accounts." Marcus stood abruptly and walked to the window, his shoulders shaking. "I thought I was special. I thought she chose me because she loved me." The bitterness in his voice was painful to hear. Detective Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "Mr. Morrison, you need to understand that people like Amanda are professional manipulators. They study human psychology. They know exactly what to say, how to act, how to make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. That's how they survive and thrive. You're not stupid or weak for falling for it. You're human, and she exploited that humanity. Over the next week, we learned the full extent of Amber's criminal enterprise from our home. The stolen merchandise in the basement represented only a fraction of what she had moved through our house over 3 years. Detectives estimated that she had stolen and fenced over $800,000 worth of luxury goods during her time living with us. She had partnerships with other thieves who would boost high-end merchandise from stores, deliver it to our basement, and she would sell it through various online marketplaces using fake business names and accounts. The money was laundered through cryptocurrency and offshore accounts, making it difficult but not impossible to trace. The identity theft was even more extensive and heartbreaking. In Amber's filing cabinet, they found personal information for 43 different people. Credit card numbers, social security numbers, driver's license information, bank account details. Some victims were people she had met briefly at social gatherings or networking events, their information lifted from wallets or purses during bathroom breaks. Others were completely random, their information purchased from other criminals on the dark web. She had opened credit cards in their names, taken out loans, made purchases, all while these innocent people's credit scores were destroyed and their lives thrown into chaos. Detective Torres arranged for me to speak with some of the other victims, people whose information Amber had stolen. The conversations were devastating. An elderly man in Florida named Walter, whose retirement savings had been drained, forcing him to move in with his daughter. A young couple in Texas, newly married, whose wedding fund Amber had stolen, leaving them to cancel their celebration and start their marriage in debt. A single mother in Ohio, whose identity theft had resulted in her losing her job when a background check showed fraudulent accounts she knew nothing about. Each person's story was a reminder of the human cost of Amber's crimes, the real lives destroyed by her greed and complete lack of empathy. The forensic accountant who examined Marcus's finances delivered news that left my son pale and shaking. The total amount stolen from Marcus personally was $127,000. His savings, credit cards opened in his name, loans he never applied for, and transfers from his accounts that Amber had made using banking apps she had secretly installed on his phone. His credit score had gone from excellent to catastrophic. He would spend years rebuilding financially, assuming we could even recover any of the money, which the accountant said was unlikely since most of it had been moved through channels designed to make recovery nearly impossible. My own financial losses, while smaller, were still significant. $63,000 between the wedding I had paid for, the money I had given Amber for supposed emergencies, and several credit cards she had opened in my name without my knowledge, using information she had copied from documents in my home office. My credit score, carefully maintained over 40 years of responsible financial management, was ruined. The accountant explained that while we could dispute the fraudulent charges and accounts, the process would take years, and success was not guaranteed. The media discovered the story within days, and suddenly my quiet suburban street was filled with news vans and reporters shouting questions whenever I stepped outside. Suburban daughter-in-law ran criminal empire from basement, the headlines screamed. Local family duped by career con artist for 3 years. The attention was humiliating. My neighbors, people I had known for decades, looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. How could you not know? I heard one woman whisper to another at the grocery store. 3 years and she never suspected anything? Some friends rallied around me, bringing casseroles and offering support. Others quietly distanced themselves, as if my poor judgment was contagious. The worst were the online comments on news articles. Strangers who felt entitled to judge my intelligence, my parenting, my entire life based on the fact that I had trusted the wrong person. Marcus took a leave of absence from work, unable to face his colleagues and the questions he knew they would ask. He moved back into my house, unable to bear staying in the master bedroom he had shared with Amber. Instead, he slept in his old childhood bedroom, surrounded by remnants of his teenage years, and spent most days in a depression that terrified me. He barely ate, rarely spoke, and spent hours staring at his phone, scrolling through photos of his fake marriage, trying to find signs he should have seen. The criminal proceedings moved forward with bureaucratic efficiency. Amber, or Amanda as we now had to call her, was denied bail. The judge declared her a significant flight risk, given her history of fleeing jurisdictions and violating parole. She was charged with organized retail theft, 43 counts of identity theft, multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, forgery, and parole violation. The prosecution estimated she could face up to 20 years in federal prison if convicted on all counts. Her public defender initially suggested she might plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, but Amanda refused. She wanted a trial. She wanted to fight. Detective Chen told us this was typical of narcissistic criminals who believed they were smarter than everyone else and could talk their way out of anything. The preliminary hearings were torture. Marcus and I had to attend, had to sit in a courtroom and see Amanda brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit and chains. The first time she saw us, she smiled. Actually smiled. A cold, cruel expression that had nothing to do with happiness. During one hearing, when the prosecutor detailed some of her crimes, she turned in her seat and winked at Marcus. He left the courtroom and vomited in the hallway bathroom. I wanted to scream at her, to demand to know how she could be so heartless, but our lawyer advised silence. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you react. That's what she wants. She feeds on other people's pain. Over the next few months, more victims came forward. Not just people whose identities she had stolen, but other men she had conned in previous years. They contacted the prosecutor's office, wanting to testify, wanting to make sure she finally faced consequences for all the destruction she had caused. I spoke with 2 of them, men whose lives paralleled Marcus's experience with eerie similarity. Both had met Amanda under different names in different circumstances, but with the same story of tragic loss and no family. Both had married her quickly. Both had housed her while she ran her criminal operations from their homes without their knowledge. Both had been financially devastated when she either got caught or sensed police attention and fled. One man, Christopher from Nevada, had lost his house to foreclosure because of debts Amanda had racked up in his name. Another, David from Arizona, had spent 2 years in legal battles trying to prove he hadn't known about the stolen goods found in his garage after Amanda disappeared. The FBI had initially suspected him of being her accomplice. Speaking with these men helped Marcus understand that nothing about his relationship with Amanda had been special or unique. He was just another mark in a long line of victims. She had no feelings for him, had never loved him, had simply identified him as a good target and executed her well-practiced con. The trial finally began 8 months after Amanda's arrest, in a federal courthouse downtown. The prosecution had built an overwhelming case, and witness after witness testified to her crimes. Store security footage showed her coordinating with other shoplifters. Financial experts traced money through her various accounts. Victims testified about discovering their identities had been stolen, and the nightmare that followed. Christopher, the man from Nevada, gave particularly powerful testimony about how Amanda had isolated him from his family and friends, had made him dependent on her emotionally, and had stolen everything, including his ability to trust another person. When it was Marcus's turn to testify, I watched my son walk to the witness stand with a courage I didn't know he still possessed. The prosecutor walked him through his relationship with Amanda, the lies she had told, the money she had stolen, the discovery of her criminal operation in our basement. Marcus's voice remained steady, even when Amanda's lawyer tried to suggest that Marcus must have known about the stolen goods, must have been complicit or at least willfully ignorant. No, Marcus said firmly. I trusted my wife completely. She lied to me every single day for 3 years. She was a professional criminal who knew exactly how to deceive people. I was her victim, not her accomplice. When I testified, I made sure to look Amanda in the eyes as I described the devastation she had caused our family. I detailed the wedding I had paid for with money meant for my future security, the trust I had given her by welcoming her into my home, the way she had manipulated my love for my son to gain access to our lives. I spoke about the other victims, the 43 people whose identities she had stolen, the families she had destroyed in other states. I wanted the jury to understand that this wasn't just about stolen handbags and fraudulent credit cards. This was about a predator who deliberately targeted good people and destroyed them for profit. Amanda watched me testify with that same cold smile, occasionally shaking her head as if I were a child saying something foolish. Her lawyer's defense strategy seemed to be that Amanda had had a difficult childhood, that society had failed her, that she was more victim than villain. They brought in a psychologist who testified about trauma and survival mechanisms, trying to generate sympathy for a woman who had systematically destroyed dozens of lives without remorse. The prosecution countered with their own expert, who testified that Amanda exhibited classic signs of antisocial personality disorder, that she was a calculating predator who understood right from wrong, but simply didn't care about anyone but herself. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts, every single charge, from the smallest fraud to the most serious felony, guilty across the board. Amanda's face when the verdict was read showed a flash of genuine shock, as if she had truly believed she could charm or manipulate her way out of consequences, even from a jury who had heard overwhelming evidence of her crimes. At sentencing 3 weeks later, the judge was stern and uncompromising. Ms. Bartlett, you are a predator who has left a trail of destruction across multiple states. You have shown no remorse for your actions, no empathy for your victims, and no indication that you would do anything differently if given the chance. You targeted good people, exploited their kindness, and destroyed their lives for your own financial gain. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also be required to pay restitution in the amount of $1.2 million to your various victims, though this court has little faith that you will ever pay a meaningful portion of that debt. 15 years. Amanda would be in her mid-40s by the time she was released. For the first time since her arrest, she showed real emotion, screaming at the judge that it wasn't fair, that she had been a victim of circumstances, that everyone was persecuting her. Bailiffs had to physically remove her from the courtroom as she raged, against the injustice of being held accountable for her choices. Marcus and I left the courthouse that day feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Justice had been served, but it didn't undo the damage. It didn't restore the money or the trust or the 3 years of our lives that had been built on lies. In the months that followed, we began the slow process of rebuilding. Marcus eventually returned to work, though he transferred to a different hospital system where fewer people knew his story. He started therapy, working through the trauma of discovering that his entire marriage had been a con, that the woman he had loved had never existed. The therapist explained that Marcus needed to grieve not just the end of his relationship, but the loss of his own narrative, his understanding of his own judgment, and his ability to trust. 2 years after Amanda's conviction, Marcus started cautiously dating again, though he approached relationships very differently now. Background checks were non-negotiable. He took things slowly. He looked for authenticity rather than perfection, for consistency rather than intensity. He told me once that he would probably never love anyone with the same complete abandonment he had loved Amanda, that there would always be a part of him held in reserve, watching for red flags. It made me sad that she had stolen that openness from him, but I understood it was a necessary protection. I sold the house 18 months after Amanda's arrest. I couldn't bear to live there anymore. Couldn't walk past that basement door without remembering what had been hidden behind it. Couldn't sleep in my bedroom without thinking about the criminal who had slept upstairs while running her operation below. I moved to a smaller condo across town, a fresh start in a space that held no memories of Amanda or her betrayal. I donated most of my furniture, wanting nothing that she had touched or used. The new place was mine alone, clean and safe and free from the contamination of her presence. I became involved in advocacy work, speaking at community centers and senior centers about financial abuse and how to protect yourself from con artists. I shared my story, painful as it was, because I learned that my experience resonated with so many people. Elder abuse, romance scams, financial exploitation, these crimes were far more common than most people realized. At every presentation, someone would approach me afterward with their own story of being deceived, of trusting the wrong person, of having their kindness exploited. I started a blog documenting my experience and recovery, and it attracted thousands of followers, many of them victims of similar cons, who found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. The financial recovery was slow and frustrating. Most of the money Amanda had stolen was gone, dissipated through her network of accomplices and untraceable transactions. We recovered about $8,000 total, a fraction of what had been taken. Marcus declared bankruptcy, the only way to escape the crushing debt Amanda had created in his name. My credit score slowly improved as fraudulent accounts were disputed and closed, but it took years before I could qualify for a credit card or loan again. The non-financial recovery was even harder. Learning to trust people again. Learning to not see every friendly gesture as potential manipulation. Learning to accept that most people are good, even though some are predators. My sister Janet was instrumental in this process, patiently listening to my fears and doubts, gently pushing me to re-engage with the world, reminding me that isolating myself would be letting Amanda win even from her prison cell. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the years Amanda lived with us, realizing only in retrospect how she had slowly isolated Marcus and me from outside relationships, making us more dependent on her and less likely to have anyone who might question her story. 3 years after Amanda's conviction, Marcus met someone, a woman named Jennifer, who worked as a teacher at a school near his hospital. Their relationship developed slowly over months of coffee dates and long conversations before Marcus felt comfortable enough to tell her about Amanda. Jennifer's response was exactly what Marcus needed. She didn't judge him for being deceived. She didn't treat him as damaged goods. She simply listened, asked thoughtful questions, and made it clear that his past didn't define his future. When Marcus brought Jennifer to meet me for the first time, I was cautiously optimistic. I had learned my lesson about being immediately charmed, but Jennifer was patient with my questions, understanding of my need to verify aspects of her story, and genuinely kind in a way that felt authentic rather than performed. She had family I could meet, friends I could talk to, a verifiable past that checked out in every way. Most importantly, she didn't rush anything. She understood that both Marcus and I needed time to trust again. When Marcus proposed to Jennifer 2 years later, my feelings were complicated. Joy that my son had found real love with a genuine person, but also anxiety about whether I could trust my own judgment after being so thoroughly fooled by Amanda. The wedding was small and intimate, nothing like the expensive spectacle Amanda had demanded. Jennifer's family welcomed Marcus warmly, and I found myself relaxing into the idea of having a daughter-in-law again, one who was real this time. I still think about Amanda sometimes, wonder what she's doing in federal prison, whether she's learned anything or feels any remorse. Detective Chen told me that Amanda writes letters occasionally, alternating between apologizing and blaming everyone else for her situation. Sometimes she claims she's found religion and wants forgiveness. Sometimes she threatens legal action for wrongful conviction despite the overwhelming evidence. I don't respond to any of them. She wants attention, wants to maintain some connection to her victims, and I refuse to give her that satisfaction. The plumber, Mario, remained a good friend through everything. He testified at Amanda's trial about discovering the hidden room, and he never once made me feel foolish for not knowing what was happening in my own basement. He told me that evil is good at hiding, that criminals like Amanda spend years perfecting their deceptions, and that I shouldn't blame myself for being a kind person who trusted family. He fixed my new condo's plumbing at cost and joked that at least this place didn't have any hidden criminal enterprises in the basement. His kindness and normalcy were healing in ways I didn't expect. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed. The vague job details that could never be verified. The complete absence of family or old friends who could have confirmed her story. The expensive lifestyle with no apparent income. The controlling behavior around the basement and finances. That isolated us from outside relationships. The constant need for money, and the elaborate explanations for where it was going. But I also understand that seeing these signs in retrospect is very different from recognizing them in real time when you're emotionally invested in believing someone you love. That's what I try to communicate in my advocacy work now. Here are the warning signs to watch for. Someone with no verifiable past, no family, no long-term friends who can vouch for them. Someone who moves very quickly to establish emotional intimacy and dependence. Someone whose financial situation never quite adds up. Who always has explanations for inconsistencies, but those explanations can't be verified. Someone who isolates you from other relationships or makes you feel guilty for spending time with anyone but them. Someone who is defensive or angry when asked reasonable questions about their background or finances. Someone who insists on keeping areas of their life completely private and off-limits. Someone whose story changes in small ways over time. Who can't keep all their lies straight. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if you have that nagging doubt in the back of your mind, listen to it. Don't let charm and manipulation override your gut feeling that something isn't right. I tell audiences that I had doubts about Amanda. Little moments where things didn't add up. But I pushed those doubts aside because I wanted to believe in her. I wanted my son to be happy. I wanted a daughter. My emotional needs made me vulnerable to her deception. And that's exactly what predators like her count on. The question I get asked most often is whether I can ever forgive Amanda for what she did to our family. The honest answer is that I don't think about forgiveness much. Forgiveness implies she deserves it, that she somehow earned the right to be released from accountability. What I focus on instead is moving forward, building a life that isn't defined by what she did to us. I don't hate her anymore. That would give her too much power over my emotional state. I simply recognize her as a dangerous person who hurt my family and is now paying the legal consequences for her crimes. Whether she feels remorse or not is irrelevant to my healing. Marcus struggles more with the forgiveness question. He loved her, or loved who he thought she was, and that makes the betrayal cut deeper. His therapist has helped him understand that he can grieve the relationship he thought he had, while also acknowledging that it was never real. He's working on forgiving himself for being deceived, which his therapist says is actually more important than whether he forgives Amanda. I'm proud of how far he's come. From the broken man who could barely get out of bed after her arrest, to someone who has rebuilt his life and found real love with Jennifer. If you're watching this video and you recognize yourself in any part of this story, if you're involved with someone who shows these red flags, please investigate before you get in too deep. It's not paranoid to verify someone's background, to ask questions, to insist on transparency about finances and history. Real love doesn't require blind trust from day one. Real love welcomes questions because it has nothing to hide. Real love builds slowly over time as two people genuinely get to know each other, not in an intense whirlwind where you're swept off your feet and isolated from everyone who might raise concerns. And if you're already in a situation where you've discovered you've been deceived, please know that it's not your fault. Professional con artists are professional because they're good at what they do. They study human psychology. They know how to exploit kindness, trust, and love. Being deceived by someone like Amanda doesn't make you stupid or weak. It makes you human. What matters now is how you respond, getting help, protecting yourself legally and financially, and beginning the process of healing. There are resources available: victim advocates, financial counselors, therapists who specialize in helping people recover from this type of trauma. You don't have to go through it alone. 3 years after everything fell apart, I can finally say I'm okay. Not the same person I was before Amanda. I'll never be that trusting or naive again. But okay in a new way. Stronger, wiser, more cautious, but not closed off. I have relationships with people who have proven themselves trustworthy over time. I have a daughter-in-law who is genuine and kind. I have a son who survived devastation and came out the other side. I have a purpose in helping others avoid or recover from similar situations. The scars are still there. I still flinch sometimes when someone seems too good to be true. I still have moments of anger at myself for missing signs that seem so obvious now. But I'm building a life that has meaning beyond what was done to me. And that, I've learned, is the best revenge against people like Amanda. Not letting them define your story forever. Not giving them the power to destroy you completely. Living well. Loving cautiously but genuinely. Helping others. That's how you win in the end. So if you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you. Thank you for listening to what happened to my family, for understanding that this could happen to anyone, for taking seriously the warning signs that might protect you or someone you love. Please share this story if you found it valuable. Hit that subscribe button if you want to be part of a community that believes in protecting families from predators. Drop a comment telling me where you're from, and whether this story opened your eyes to red flags you might have been ignoring. And remember, the most dangerous criminals don't look like monsters. They look like Amber, beautiful, charming, with a compelling story that tugs at your heart. Evil hides in plain sight, wearing a smile and calling you family. Stay safe, stay aware, protect yourself and the people you love. Trust but verify. Love but maintain boundaries. And never, ever feel foolish for being kind to someone who didn't deserve it. Their choices are their responsibility, not yours. Thank you for listening. God bless you all. And may you never have to learn these lessons the hard way like we did.